And that because it is an international meeting, el resto de la presentación va a ser en español. No, it's not kidding. But it's only for checking if you are. Yeah. Well, first of all, my acknowledgements and disclaimers. The first, well, the communities that care adaptation process and implementation was financed by San Carlos de Maipo Foundation. The second thing that I need to say is my English is not as good as I want. So I know that I'm going to make mistakes, I'm going to use bad verbs, I'm like the Beatles when they said, and she don't care, but I'm going to say that also. But if you have any trouble in order to understand me, please raise your hand and I will explain myself again, because I hope that you don't have the problem if I need you to say the things again in order to understand you when you make a question, right? And the third thing that I want to say is thanks to all the people that lives in these municipalities that participate until now in communities that care in Chile in these 10 years. They trust in us, and for that we will be eternally grateful. So, this is Chile. About 5,000 miles from here. The first thing that I need to teach to you is this is Chile, no Chile. Chile is a food. Yeah, Chile, it's a country. And the current population of our country is 20 million people. It's like the population that you find in the state of New York. And the 89% of the population is urban, which is curiosity, the rate of population urban in the state of New York. Well, the similarities ends there. Chile is a middle-income country and has some things that other countries doesn't have. Like, for example, we are the only country in Latin America who has visa waiver. It's easy to travel to the States. And if we see the gross domestic product per capita, we can see that here is the average of OECD. Here's USA, here us, quite less than half, right? But over Mexico, China, and Brazil. Well, almost the 40% of the population in Chile lives in one city, Santiago de Chile. And of course, you see it there, a very developed city, right? Looks great. But also we have poverty. But not the poverty that you can find in places like Mexico. According to the World Bank, this is the rate of poverty of people who lives with less than $2.15 per day. And if Chile is 0.4%, USA is 0.3%, and Mexico is 1.2%. So Mexico is much higher. Chile is not as poor as other countries in Latin America. But one interesting gap that you can find is the educational level. This is the rate of adults that are below upper secondary. In the United States, it's 8%. In Chile, it's 28%. In Mexico, it's 56%. So it is important in the future, because when we face a much complex model like CTC, we're going to find different things in order to explain to adults what prevention, ecological system, and other things implies to us. Let me tell you some bit about San Carlos de Maipo Foundation. It was a non-profit organization which mission is to promoting the positive development of childhood, founded in 1997. The main donor and founder is the Sociedad del Canal de Maipo, which is one of the most antique private organizations in Chile, 2,000 years. And our annual budget is $6.2 million in USD PPP. And this became, San Carlos Maipo Foundation, one of the 25% of the Chilean biggest non-profit institutions. So when we say there's a foundation here in the States, I know, Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation, we're not like the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation in Chile, we're smaller. So what started in 1997, and between 1997 and 2013, we worked like a philanthropic organization. That's what I did, this idea. the San Carlos de Maipo gave money to other institutions, and the other institutions do whatever they do with kids, recovering public spaces, or working with people that was in jail. But in 2013, we evaluated what happened until now, until that point, and realized that there are things that we want to change. And we called in the history of Foundation the big change. We realized that this third-party implementation model is not the model that we want, because it doesn't leave to the organization any special knowledge. So we changed to a direct implementation model. And the second thing is that we saw that those organizations do a lot of innovation, but we didn't know if that innovations worked. So we changed to an evidence-based approach. And then with this new conviction, in 2013, we start a community-based intervention and failed. It was a catastrophe. So we realized that we need to change something, and we try to find a different approach to community, and then we find communities that care. But trying to find a community approach, we discovered prevention. And that's when we have the third step of the big change. And the San Carlos de Maipo Foundation changed from focusing on remedying breaches of childhood rights to prevention in childhood development, and changed from a philanthropic organization to a positive childhood development organization. The CTC principles shaped the strategic plan and principles of the San Carlos de Maipo Foundation until today, not only in the way the San Carlos de Maipo Foundation reached the community, in all the aspects of the foundation, in all the areas. And it's an example of how in this moment we are showing what we do. This is in Spanish, it's not important, but the important thing is that if you read this, is a little small, right? I'm sorry. But it's talking about protective factors, risk factors, the different environments, the behaviors that we want to prevent. We understand it in this moment in the shape that is quite similar, and is and learn a lot from communities that care. Until now, I'm explaining myself rightly. You are, yeah? Okay, thank you. Well, so we found communities that care and said, Eureka, for the people who don't speak Greek, and showed this to our main stakeholders. And they saw us like the Greek people saw Archimedes when he said Eureka. Because, well, we are not doing this alone. We have stakeholders, the members of our board, the people who take the decisions. Our own team who saw this and said, what? And the neighbors of the communities that already were working with us. Because, as Nicole said, it's not starting by scratch, that as the idea of the symposium is, we want to say the things in the different aspects of implementation. So we came with the idea, and the people said, what? And a different kind of issues arise. What kind of issues? Cultural issues. It is feasible to work with an American model in a Chilean communities? Okay, yeah, Starbucks works. But communities that care? Well, we realized that there is some things that we need to focus. We said, okay, we're going to do an adaptation and coaching process with the University of Washington. But I think that not only the adaptation process was important, the possibility of it, even when the adaptation was very cosmetical, as Nicole said, was important for the stakeholders to say, okay, we can trust in a new model. Not only the adaptation, the possibility of that. The second thing is the collaboration with a Colombian NGO, Rumbos, because we can say to the stakeholders, they worked in a Latin American country before, now it can work in a new country. And the third thing is that we try to choose a team in our foundation with advanced English skills and Colombian to Chilean Spanish skills. Some materials must be translated directly from the English because the Colombian approach didn't work in that moment. Second issue, well, the skill issues. Remember the educational gap? How to work with the existing San Carlos de Maipo Foundation community teams and with neighbors on a much more complex model. And that's when we realized the need of a local coach capacity. The University of Washington works with our local capacity, and the local capacity works in the territory and understand what happened in each territory with a deeply look. And with a focus on the pedagogical aspects of the model. And third issue, the time frame issue. Well, it is possible to implement a long-term project in an institution accustomed to short-term interventions. This is an image of a bikeway. This is one of our past interventions. Very concrete, very short-term. And we try to convince our board to change the communities that care. And so we use two tools. One is the paradox of the bullied child. I don't know if it's an international concept, but I think that it's going to work, right? Who do you prefer? The best psychologist to treat your bullied child or prevent the event of bullying? And it works in order to explain to our board, okay, prevention, it's better. But there's a cultural level that we found and use. If you are part of a 200 years institution, you can face a long-term project. So finding this kind of cultural level is quite important for reach the objectives that you want. Well, some lessons learned in the last 10 years. At the beginning, we tried to work with smaller territories because we want to maintain control. Yeah? Well, what do you think? It worked well or bad? Well, it works bad. It was very poor political influence. In this moment, we tried to work with all the municipality territory. At the beginning, we tried to focus in neighborhood-focused boards in order to, because we understand the concept of community, and we said that community is not a community if we don't have neighbors. Well, that's true, but also you need another parts. Well, what do you think? It works or not? Well, no. No. It was poorly empowered boards, and we need to balance in this moment to get balanced neighbor authorities boards. For the people who are reaching recently, hi, I'm Raúl Perry, I'm from Chile. If you don't understand my English, please raise your hand and ask me, because I know that's not as good as I want, but please, okay? We understand that at the beginning, the San Carlos de Maipo Foundation must be the backbone agency, because it's a pilot experience, and that works right, because we had the opportunity to acquire direct knowledge adaptations. And in this moment, we're trying to go to a municipality as the backbone agency and the Fundación as the coach. We start with a finance strategy based on the community's own ability to generate incomes. In the idea of prevention is a new community concern. That didn't work well. These groups based on neighbors as a lack of project execution capacity, and so the prevention as an expensive strategy because it was completely new. You need to develop a new area in the municipality or a new area in your board, in your community board. Well, it's a lot of effort. In this moment, we're trying to put CDC as the way to prioritize the present resources available in the community, especially the municipality and public resources, also the private, but a way to prioritize, not to make appear new ones, and to support the existing organization of also the municipality and the boards of members of the community. And we start with two teams inside the foundation, one dedicated to investigation, another dedicated to implementation. Because there was a new model that requires adaptations and a very close look at the local reality. And it works very well, because with multiple focused learning, it allows this. The last product that the investigation team produced to us was this. This is the systematization of the first 5 years of implementation from communities that care. For all the people who want to implement in Latin American context, I think there's a very interesting document.
In Spanish.
In Spanish. Well, nothing that ChatGPT don't resolve. Well, I'm going to end with very fast speaking about this, because Nicole, I think, explained it better than me. We need an evidence-based intervention infrastructure. If you want to, like Bosco said, how many interventions did you implement? Very few, because we didn't have. But there was a moment in where we need to resolve this question. What should come first? The evidence-based intervention infrastructure or the preventive system that needs them? What should come first? Well, it's a chicken or egg problem, right? Well, we believe in that moment that we need to develop both.
Yeah.
If we know, we never start. And I think that this was a very important decision, not without costs. Not without costs, but it's an important decision, and changed the shape of the environment of Chile during the last 10 years. I'm not going to pass through there. The persistence challenge of this process. Well, first of all, prevention versus treatment. People in Chile also said all the time, treatment, and take the big slice of the cake. Long term against short term is more or less another part of the equation, right? The municipalities could be the backbone agencies, but there are institutions with a weak institutionality. So they're a key component of the sustainability of the project in the future, but we need to work with them a lot in order to give management skills and also a better management of the budget. And finally, we need more evidence-based interventions in order to give to the community more tools for their action plans. And finally, I want to give an acknowledgement to both great partners for us. One, University of Washington, Nicole, thanks so much for all the work that we have done in these years. And also, I'm very happy, I feel very thankfully, I don't know exactly the word, but to all the people in SPR. Since 1916, I was coming to the seminar and learn a lot. I didn't come from this. 2016, thank you. 2016, thank you, Nico. From 2016, I was coming from this seminar, and
in the other life.
And I didn't come from this world, and I learned a lot. So thank you. And the last part of the presentation, we're going to show a little bit about San Jose de Maipo. This is Chile. The red area is the metropolitan region. Inside the metropolitan region is San Jose de Maipo, which is a town with 20,000 people living there, 40% rural, and surrounded by the beautiful mountains of the central area of Chile. Nicole, do you explain what you're going to see?
Sure. Yes, we have video that shows Jimena Saavedra, our community coordinator in San Jose de Maipo. She's been working there for the last 10 years, leading these efforts. And there are some testimonies from community coalition members and also from key leaders. They were having their 10-year anniversary of music care in the community, so they had the celebration and the whole meeting. So there are some snippets and videos from each one of them. And it's in Spanish, but there are subtitles. The subtitles are not fabulous, they're okay. Where it says commune, it's community really, or neighborhood. But for the most part, I think you'll get the gist of it. And I don't know if there are questions before, or maybe we should watch that and then. We are a bit delayed. I've been a really bad chair. I apologize.
Is there is a question? Is there a question?
No, I haven't got one, but
No. Tengo que sacar.
Tienes que sacar la presentación.
Sí.
This worked really well when we practiced it before.
you need to exit here.
Right.
Hoy quiero contar cómo ha sido este trabajo que ya llevamos, con mucho orgullo lo puedo decir, trabajando 10 años. En el año 2014, cuando llega el sistema de comunidades que se cuidan acá a la comuna, empezamos a contactar a todas las personas claves, vecinos, representantes de organizaciones que quisieran trabajar la prevención. Compartimos en ese momento las experiencias que teníamos, analizamos los recursos que había en la comuna y ahí empezamos a construir un plan de trabajo que tuviera una identidad propia. Realizamos una gran alianza de trabajo con todos los actores de la comuna. Dentro de eso estaban los representantes de las juntas de vecinos, los líderes claves, que por ejemplo están el alcalde, los representantes de educación, los representantes de salud, los representantes de deporte. Si bien la Fundación San Carlos de Maipo trae este sistema de comunidades que se cuidan como modelo de la Universidad de Washington, es la comunidad, siento yo, la que se apropia de una manera nueva de trabajar la prevención de conductas problemáticas. No es que vengan a decirnos qué tenemos que hacer. La Fundación San Carlos de Maipo nos entregó nuevas herramientas. Gracias a eso pudimos diseñar un proceso flexible e interactivo, donde salieron nuevas ideas, nuevas propuestas y que fueron presentadas ante nuestros líderes claves. Formamos en el año 2014 un gran consejo comunitario que estaba representado por sus vecinos y por los representantes de las organizaciones. Usamos los datos de nuestra encuesta juvenil. Gracias a eso pudimos tomar decisiones sobre qué problemáticas debíamos abordar. Aprendimos como consejo a seleccionar qué programas y estrategias debíamos traer a nuestra comuna. Ha sido un trabajo real, con mucho compromiso y colaboración. Gracias a eso yo creo que este consejo hoy puede decir que tiene el empoderamiento de su propio destino. El modelo de la Universidad de Washington, junto con el financiamiento y apoyo de la Fundación San Carlos de Maipo, han permitido a la comunidad tomar las riendas, aplicar las estrategias, los programas adecuados para la realidad de esta comuna. La participación activa y continua de todos es fundamental para el éxito de este gran proyecto.
Hola, mi nombre es Pia Rodríguez Fuentes, soy fonoaudióloga y trabajo en el programa Chile Crece Contigo Municipal. Hace algún tiempo pertenezco al Consejo de Comunidades que se cuidan en el involucramiento de jóvenes. Lo que más destaco de comunidades que se cuidan es el trabajo que realizan acá en la comuna, el involucramiento que tienen con la comunidad, con las redes, en los temas de prevención en los niños, jóvenes, adolescentes. Y lo que más me motiva a trabajar en comunidades que se cuidan es el compromiso que tienen con la comuna principalmente y con la primera infancia, que creo que es un tema sumamente importante y que debemos abordar.
Mi nombre es Francisco Araya, yo soy parte de la unidad de discapacidad social e inclusión de San José de Maipo. Nosotros estamos incorporando recientemente a la comunidad. Hemos visto el trabajo que han hecho durante los últimos años en la escuela. Tenemos experiencia en lo que tiene que ver con el trabajo de personas con discapacidad en escuelas de San José de Maipo. Y nos hemos dado cuenta que comunidades que se cuidan siempre ha estado presente de forma transversal, con acciones súper concretas a partir de la evidencia, que siempre es importante y que de alguna forma las acciones que se hagan en relación al desarrollo social, en relación a la salud mental, en relación a la prevención de ciertas conductas que pueden ser perjudiciales para nuestros niños y adolescentes. Creemos que sin duda es una labor súper noble, muy grata también, y ha hecho también que las diferentes organizaciones y entidades relacionadas con la niñez y la adolescencia puedan trabajar de forma más común.
Quiero destacar el trabajo de comunidades que se cuidan, ya que es la madre, creo yo, o a nivel macro, de toda la red de San José de Maipo, ya que nos une como redes e instituciones y nos ayuda también a poder comunicarnos de forma fluida, también a dialogar, a ver las necesidades de la comuna, a conocer las realidades de otras instituciones y también ser un aporte como red a toda la comuna de San José de Maipo.
Si me preguntaran qué es lo más destacado que ha aportado San José y ha sido útil, el primero que nada está basado en evidencia, no son creencias ni percepciones. Por lo tanto, se pueden hacer intervenciones muy positivas y el sistema además ha demostrado ser útil. ¿Qué me motiva a estar ahí? Simplemente el canalizar un servicio público útil, eficaz, eficiente, certero y que realmente da resultados.
Lo que yo más rescato del programa Comunidades que se Cuidan es que trabajan con la prevención. Todos los resultados que nosotros hemos obtenido de la encuesta son los que nos orientan el camino para trabajar con las comunidades y hace que los cambios sean significativos, pero a la vez respetuosos también con las comunidades con las que estamos trabajando. Me motiva que trabajamos con resultados, que se trabaja con evidencia y que se trabaja con altos estándares. Entonces todo el trabajo siempre está orientado a la realidad social de cada comunidad. Eso me motiva porque siempre tenemos el norte marcado. Sabemos para dónde tenemos que ir marcando nuestro trabajo.
El modelo, el trabajo a través de la Fundación, que podía traer ideas nuevas a la comuna y cómo complementar lo que ya teníamos en San José de Maipo.
Lo que me incentivó a participar es lo que podemos hacer en prevención con los niños. O sea, ya llevamos 10 años, esperamos que lo que en esa oportunidad teníamos trabajando, que eran niños de 7 años, 8 años, ya ahora son de mayor edad, esperamos que podamos haber influido en algo su decisión en la prevención.
Lo que nos motivó como colegio fue que ellos nos apoyaron con estrategias basadas en la evidencia. Entonces eso como institución nos pareció súper relevante porque ya podíamos mirar y tomar decisiones desde otra perspectiva.
Y me motivó para poder ayudar a representar a los niños de tanta violencia, tantas cosas que están pasando acá.
Siempre positiva. En el Comunidades que se Cuidan se protege mucho como la camaradería, el que todos participan, el que todos podemos opinar y que nos dan un espacio para que nosotros podamos desde nuestra experiencia ir aportando a estas Comunidades que se Cuidan.
Mi experiencia ha sido muy buena, yo creo que más que buena, porque el trabajo articulado con el Comunidades que se Cuidan nos ha permitido poder hacer nuevas acciones en la primera infancia, que es como nuestro foco desde donde partimos como Chile Crece.
Entendiendo que son etapas que se van quemando y eran 4 años, 5 años, para poder llegar a trabajar de forma asertiva dentro de las comunidades, eso a mí me complicaba. Pero bueno, entendí con el tiempo que llevan procesos de trabajo, llevan procesos de estudio y de compenetración con toda la comunidad.
Bueno, yo he tenido experiencias bien positivas porque de ver que esto son de 10 años y hemos ido avanzando.
Los principales obstáculos tienen que ver que nos crean que es un proceso lento pero que tiene resultados.
La falta de motivación de las personas que ingresan, o sea, vienen y después se van.
Si hablo de un obstáculo, podría ser quizás el tema de la toma de la encuesta, en lo que tiene que ver con lo administrativo, que de repente se retrasan los procesos.
Nos costaba un poco la participación porque nos faltaban recursos, pero con San José más que nada nos ayudó a estabilizar un poco el tema, a mirarlo de otra forma y entender que las cosas se van dando con el tiempo.
Entonces ir contándole a los colegios que el Comunidades que se Cuida va trabajando con evidencia, pero que los resultados los vamos a tener a largo plazo, no en un par de años, eso como que te crean con esos argumentos, eso es un poco difícil, eso es un obstáculo.
Ha generado un gran impacto a nivel comunal el tema de la encuesta en todas las instituciones, entonces, y de hecho en todas las reuniones siempre sale mencionada la encuesta juvenil de Comunidades que se Cuidan.
Ayudando y entregando todo lo que se pueda a comunidades que se cuidan, porque pretendo que ellos también lleven esta bandera lucha, aparte de la prevención de drogas, situaciones conflictivas, pero también el tema de depresión y el tema de salud mental para mí es muy importante en este momento.
Son procesos largos, pero ya se está viendo lo que uno esperaba.
Y la encuesta juvenil nos ha mostrado que lo que nosotros creemos muchas veces difiere con lo que realmente les está pasando. Y eso ha sido un golpe bien grande, la verdad. Pensar que nosotros estamos posicionados acá y que a ellos les está pasando eso y lo queremos ayudar en ese ámbito, cuando lo que les está pasando es otra cosa totalmente distinta. Entonces la encuesta juvenil lo que hace es esa dosis de realidad para decir desde ellos lo que nos está pasando y desde ahí poder tomar las decisiones.
Questions. We also have Mark Eddy as our discussant, and he's done quite a bit of international work, not in Chile, but in other countries. And I don't know if you want to come forward or not, or.
Well, thank you. That was very inspiring, and so happy that you have represented in this conversation the research team, the funder and now implementer, and participants. And so it's nice to have everybody represented at the table, and sorry that your colleagues from Chile could not have come here as well. When I come to SPR, it always feels like a family reunion, seeing brothers and sisters and cousins and parents and grandparents, and it always makes me feel warm inside and feel part of a prevention community that is worldwide, and that is it's not easy to do whatever country you're in, but particularly not in the US, which I know the best. And it takes a big group of us to support each other in this kind of work. And so I'd like you to, the last few weeks, I've been helping my daughter who just had a baby. And the baby was born about 5 weeks ago. And I've been doing night nurse duty. So I've been awake at night, typically between 1 and 4 a.m. the last several weeks. And my daughter had a really difficult pregnancy. She was sick all the time, not just morning sickness, but one of those, I forget the name of it, but when you're just sick constantly. And so that was very, very tough. And then when she was going through labor, it was also very hard, and she had to have an emergency C-section. And then after that, she got a superbug in the hospital, and she was very, very sick. And so she was in the hospital, and my wife got pneumonia, who was there to help, and she was in isolation. And so I came to help, and her husband was in the hospital with her. I was at home with their 4.5-year-old daughter, who was in emotional crisis because her mom and dad weren't there, and she's a COVID baby, and so she's used to having mom and dad around all the time. And once she finally got out of the hospital, she was totally exhausted, and now her daughter was clinging to her all the time, and Carol was still in isolation with pneumonia, and so I was doing night stuff to try to relieve things. And if you think about someone in your life, maybe your own child or a nephew or niece, I'd like you to just think about a baby that's been in your life. And look, hold that baby in front of you. Just think about that baby. Close your eyes, whatever you want to do. And, look in the eyes of that little baby. The baby is just born, and think about what that baby is like. So what kind of things did you think about? You're holding this baby. What's that baby like?
Precious.
Precious.
Vulnerable.
What's that?
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable.
Full of potential.
Full of potential. What else?
Happy.
Happy. Learning maybe what happiness means, right? Because when you put them down, they are not happy. So you get a cognitive association about happy and unhappiness. But they are very vulnerable. And think about now taking that baby, and the baby's born, and now you say, okay, baby, you're born. I'm now going to put you down, and I'm going to walk away. And it's now up to you to figure life out. Is that baby going to be able to do that? No. In fact, every time I'm a dad of 6 children, and I have 4 grandkids, and every time I've held a baby, I've wondered, how did our species ever survive, we are so vulnerable as babies. And I think about it in the context, this situation in the context of the work that you've been presenting today, because you are presenting an example of the kind of work that I think needs to happen in prevention. There's a type of work that I think often happened in prevention in the past, which was I call drive-by research. You come into a community, you do something, you get your results, your funding ends, and you depart. And chances are that at the time you were finishing that project and starting to maybe finally figure things out, and the baby was formed, then you put the baby down and you left. And that's it, But what you are illustrating is that, okay, it's been 10 plus years already that you've been trying to figure out this model. And so there was conception of the idea in a very long gestation period, and you're still maybe in that gestation period trying to figure it out. You maybe even haven't quite totally given birth yet to this baby. And in some sense, maybe you're not even ready to do what it is that a lot of us that come to this meeting do, which is we want to do these randomized controlled trials and programs to try to figure out what the heck's going on, and we need that to drive our work. And maybe at some point you'll be ready to try to think about how to do that in Chile, if you chose to go that way. But to do that, you're gonna need all the partners at the table, you need funding, you probably need braided funding from others, and pulling that off is super, super complicated. And so the issues that you've been trying to figure out and have talked about today illustrate how it's naive to think that we can do these drive-by randomized trials of programs, get some findings, create a list, and then go out there and have the world accept what we want to do and have it work, because you need a system like Community That Cares to have people thinking about this stuff. But you need all kinds of other systems too. And one of those systems is a network, not just a soul, but a network of funders that are going to be willing to also not do drive-by funding and be involved over time in trying to pull things off. You need people from other places, whether it's other places in your country or other countries that have also been trying to solve all these problems and say, hey, we're part of that family too. Maybe we've got some issues about how to help when you need to put the baby down and walk away because you can't take it anymore, so you need to have grandpa come in and do night nurse duty or whatever, you know? It takes a lot of us to get that baby into the future. So that's the kind, just because babies are filling my head right now, those are the kind of ideas I was thinking as I was watching your presentation today. But I feel so happy and pleased that you all are engaged in this work together, and impressed about what you've done so far. And I hope that you can continue for a long time on this journey to try to figure out these rather complex problems that you're trying to figure out together, and that you can help continue to enlighten the rest of us about how to get through these issues. I have been working in between Chile and the US now since 2011 on work in Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua, and more recently in Mexico and Costa Rica, and also right on the border, on the Texas-Mexico border. And the number of issues as we move ideas from one place to another, from one community to another, from one country to another, just are very complex. But I think this work across borders, whatever you want to call the border to be, is probably what we need to challenge each other, whether it is the fact that I remember one day in El Salvador, we spent about 8 hours trying to translate one simple questionnaire with 25 items from English to a couple of different versions of Spanish to German and back again, so that everybody in the room agreed that it was good. Like we were all just saying the same thing. And at the end of the day, we felt pretty good about it. But that was a long time just to do that one little thing. And it wasn't even an intervention. It was just questions that we wanted to ask parents, you know. But anyway, by engaging in that process, I think it helped us to understand better what we were actually trying to ask, you know. And so I do think that the complexities of engaging in these long-term collaborations with people that, for you, it was going home, but it also was coming back to a place that was different than when you left before, right? Because everything always changes, right? Everything stays the same, but everything always changes. So anyway, but I thank you for the work that you've been doing, and anyway, those are my thoughts.
We have very little left. If there are questions, please. Yes.
So thank you for your presentation and for that. In addition to the issues of drive-by research, which I think your example offers a good counter to that, I also think a lot about taking things we develop in the United States and implementing them in contexts outside of the United States. So even thinking about this question of what is considered a risk and protective factor, right? And you talk about, you did very superficial adaptations. Did you think any about like how you're defining risk and protective factors and how we might define them in the US, and whether that is translatable and universal to a place like Chile?
Yes, we did quite a bit of work in that, and Rick has done quite a bit of work in that as well. I don't know that I have time to talk about all of it, but one thing that might be informative is that we did, as part of this work, a focus group study that involved both Colombia and Chile. And we went into these community coalitions and we asked them, what they felt about these risk and protective factors, and does this make sense? Boiling it down in your new, in this context, what's missing? Is this reasonable? Does it kind of match what you see in your community? Because of course the people from the community have much more knowledge than an outsider does. And we talked about whether those things, that kind of knowledge, was useful for them, and what was it useful for, and how they could use that whether, so we did some work in that, and there's all, that kind of from a qualitative point of view, we asked people from the communities.
And you have a first authored paper that you
Yeah,
can share.
yeah,
to
there's,
that point.
I can, if you want, we can exchange information, I can share that paper with you. But there's also been some, psychometric work to look at those things. You've done some of that. There's been also some more cross-national, across different countries. But for the most part, there are, some of these things, examples of the risk factors are things that happen, around the world, whether there's family conflict or whether kids are, connected and committed to their school, or whether there's availability of substances in the community. So they're not, they transfer pretty well across different contexts and cultures.
It's systematically, do you want to talk a little bit about the systematic sort of review in terms of identifying risk factors?
Yes, when these risk and predictive factors were identified originally, there was, very extensive literature review and research review. So the risk factors and predictive factors that are part of this model are things that the research literature shows that are predictive and of problem behavior, substance use, delinquency, other things. And there has to be at least two kind of very good quality longitudinal studies that shows that these are predictive of those outcomes. So they're not, kind of randomly picked. Oh, this looks like smells like a risk factor, but there is quite a bit of evidence behind that. Yeah. But yes, those things do change, and we do see that there might be some new things that we need to incorporate as our culture changes, and when the original review of risk and protective factors was done, 30 years ago, whatever, there were no cell phones and kids didn't spend their time on the internet. So there are new things that are probably going on that we have to start, accounting for as well. And there are local things for different cultures that might not apply universally as well.
You have a question at the beginning of the panel that about how to involve people that don't necessarily want to be involved in voluntary actions, right? Yeah, Cristian, ¿me escuchas? Ya, perfecto. Bueno, acá en el panel hubo una pregunta. Cristian es uno de nuestros, Cristian is one of our technical assistants there in Chile. He works with also with people in San José de Maipo, but in other communities. So he's going to answer your question. Cristian, acá nos preguntan cómo se logra en el fondo que la gente se junte y quiera formar parte de una iniciativa voluntaria cuando tenemos una tendencia en Latinoamérica a no juntarnos tanto para hacer cosas en el vecindario como lo que se observa o lo que tenemos la sensación que se observa en Estados Unidos. ¿Tú nos podrías dar algunas líneas de respuesta?
Yo tengo reconozco que es difícil juntarse, ¿ya? Y eso es verdad.
So it is hard to do this. It's hard to get people together.
Me he dado cuenta que el objetivo que tiene comunidades que se cuidan sintoniza mucho con una preocupación de la gente del lugar.
Matches what the community is concerned with.
Los niños de la comunidad no les son indiferentes a los adultos. Los niños preocupan, ¿ya? La realidad que ellos viven, sus vulnerabilidades preocupan.
So adults are worried about kids, and they're worried about what's going on with them.
Y hay gente de la comunidad que de alguna manera expresa un compromiso mayor por el bienestar de los niños. Es decir, si yo pongo como causa, es decir, si yo pongo como motor de encuentro en realidad los niños del lugar, la gente, no todos, pero una mayoría importante va a asistir y se va a convocar.
So it was similar to what I had said before, that if you really center this on children and youth well-being and you say, this is about the well-being of our kids, people will come. Not everybody's going to be involved, but it is a motivation for people. Most adults in the community do want their kids to thrive. So if that's the focus, it really is a kind of a motivation.
Segunda, yo creo, asociado a eso, el tema del consumo problemático de drogas es una cosa que preocupa y que también mueve a la gente para reunirse e intentar hacer algo.
And they're worried about drug use and they want to do something about it, so it is a motivation.
Existen adultos dentro de la comunidad que no les es indiferente la situación de la infancia y la situación del consumo y se van a organizar. Y bueno, y nosotros como comunidades que se cuidan intentamos conectar con esa gente interesada.
Yeah, so they start by reaching out to those people that are interested and do want to do something about it. And you start with the group that's most interested, and then the group kind of grows from there. I am a little bit worried that somebody's going to come in and kick us out of the room, but Cristian, estoy preocupada que nos van a echar de la sala. Pero,
sí.
Así que, última cosa.
Lo último, que cuando frente a esto existe apoyo de algunas instituciones, el encuentro se refuerza. Es decir, si hay alguna entidad, municipio o alguna institución más formalizada dentro del territorio que apoya estos encuentros, se le da estabilidad, se le da un poco más de estabilidad.
So the other thing that really helps kind of the group of people stay together is when there's support from some local institution or organization or agency that, there's people kind of getting together around kids' well-being, the motivation to solve a drug problem, and then the support from, some leader organization in the area, and that has helped get people to be willing to participate, put the work in.
Muchas gracias,
Muchas gracias, Cristian. Muchas gracias. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you so much. And thank you to you, Mark. I know that it's been a grueling, few weeks, and I so appreciate you being here, sleep deprived and all. So thank you.
Thank you.